First, we gotta wait for the screen to clear and all that garbage. I hate this delay. It drives me up a freaking wall. And if somebody, people have tried a few different times. Give me a second here, make sure my sound's working. Okay, it is. People have tried a few different times to, or I've tried, I should say, a few different times to check things on the net for a way to shorten that time frame, and it just doesn't work. All right, so if you wandered in here by accident, okay, cyborg weasels are not allowed. This is the Angry Wrench Speaks show. I am the Angry Wrench. Let me make sure I got the right channel here, back and forth, whatever. Anyway, I am the Angry Wrench. I am a trans woman, a boomer trans woman. I am an activist. I'm a very loudmouth activist. This show does have occasional profanity in it. It's not every other word or whatever. But you know, you're going to hear it, and if this isn't the show for you, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. Okay, but it's not going to change. I'm just telling you right now. I don't do civil discourse, and by that I don't mean that, you know, I allow Nazis and, you know, bigots and whatever. No, it doesn't happen that way. But I'm also not going to coddle them. Anybody who wants to pop in and run their mouth. Okay, you can disagree with me on certain issues. Okay, you know, for example, you can have a difference of opinion. Strawberry cheesecake ice cream is the best ice cream in the world, in my opinion. I appreciate that you're here too, gang. You know, you can have a difference of opinion about the ice cream. You know, you can be wrong. It's okay. It's all right to be wrong once in a while. To quote Lucy Van Pelt, which is Linus's sister and Charlie Brown, Charlie said, you know, one day told her, he says, you know, you never admit you're wrong. And she goes, no, I've been wrong before. And he said, really? He said, yeah, it was October 1967. You know. Or as my dad and my mom used to say, two different things. It was, if you don't believe me, ask me. And I may not always be wrong. I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. So, we're going to get into this. I don't want to do that too much. Like I said, you know, I am a boomer trans woman. I'm disabled for a variety of things. Okay, I have, in one case, I have more letters in my disabilities than I do in my name, and I have a long name. Excuse me, coffee burp and hack all at the same time. This show is about activism. I do shows once in a while that are not quite exactly that. I may do a show on food, or I may do a show on, you know, uplifting people. Like I did a show 2-3 weeks ago, maybe it was, on, and I mean, it was sort of connected to politics and social issues, but it was more just about in general. You could watch the show and get anything out of it that had nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with social issues, but it was how to uplift yourself and how to uplift other people, and how to take a break for yourself, how to take care of yourself. Like one of my chatters usually says at the end, who's in here already currently, you know, hydrate and, you know, take care, etc. You know, if you have meds you need to take care of and you're able to do that, take your meds, you know, do whatever, take care of yourself. You can't do everything, much as I wish we could. You can't do everything, you know, so if you're able to and if you want to, do what you can while you can. Alright, so I'm going to yak just very briefly before I bring my guest on, okay? So, and also my slogan is, the Angry Wrench is kind, the Angry Wrench is not nice. And you probably don't want to really for me to really get into the description of that. Okay. So, first of all, there's a couple of things, okay? Fuck Hobby Lobby, and fuck Chick-fil-A. And in fact, one of the links that I will have in the pin post, because I follow a lot of political and social commentators on YouTube, okay? One of my favorite, Tom Collins. I think it's Tom Collins Jr., or is it Tom Powell? It's in the link anyway. And he looks like the typical quote-unquote Southern. He's got a slight amount of slang. He's an older man, got salt and pepper beard, glasses, kind of chunky. He's got a trucking company, and he's left as they come, just about. I wouldn't necessarily call him a socialist or / communist, but he's pretty close to that. A great channel, you should follow it. But you know, again, with Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A, I mean, I don't need to really go over those again. You know why I tell them to kiss my big white Irish ass. Okay, I am Irish, by the way, or as my grandmother would say, fucking Irish. Deb Haaland is the governor of New Mexico, and Trump and the GOP have decided that they're going to spend lots of money, and they have it now because they have a backer, their boss, Elon. Gang says, I'm disabled in the care, I'm not often able to be here, and that's all right, shit happens. You got a life to take care of too, We told Chick-fil-A to click off. Yeah, yeah, I've told it more than that. But Elon Musk, or as I like to call him, Lone Scum, you can anagrate it into those letters exactly if you use a K for the C, has bankrolled the GOP in large portions of America, in a large part. And so they decided they want to spend a lot of money in New Mexico to try to defeat Deb Haaland, who is a Native American, indigenous. I think she's the first woman to run in that state. I'm not positive. I don't remember if she's the first governor or not to run as a governor in the United States. And I've looked at her policies and stuff, and you should support her. If you're living in that state and you want to support her, you can be out of the state, and send money to a PAC, whatever. If the Supreme Court has decided that corporations are people too, and we don't care where the money comes from, send your money wherever you want, wherever you think it's best. There are 4 campaigns, and I won't mention them because I don't want to, as little influence as I have. I don't want to influence people, but check out this stuff for yourself. There are 4 people that I support every month, and I send $5 to. That's all I can afford, but I send $5 to each one. Because I think they do a good job. I think they do a good job of educating people. I think they do a good job of supporting people and getting the information out. Okay, so let me get back to here. Da-da-dee, da-da-dee, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, Scooby-Dee. So very briefly, again, okay, I'm tired of CNN and the media, mainstream media, as the right wing likes to call it, and I do too. And they're saying washing, all this stuff, there was a article in CNN, I was, 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was, about Trump's, I'm trying to remember the word they used. It was like Trump's push to acquire Greenland. What the fuck are you doing? Okay? The ignorance of that headline to begin with, and then the ignorance of Trump on top of that, which caused the headline, it's just sheer, I guess the best word I can use, is dumb fuckery, okay? That a president, U.S. president would think, now if this had happened, 10, 15, 20 years ago, especially under another Republican president, okay, but even under a Democratic one, in South America, oh no, here's the American and the imperialist, which they're right, trying to screw up, countries in South America. Which is also why we get a lot of people trying to go over the border, because we've fucked up those countries down there. But anyway, we can do that for another show. But the idea that you can somehow just go and buy Greenland, okay, or take it over, I forget who it was. It wasn't the Secretary of Defense, because he's usually too drunk to respond. But it was somebody in the Defense Department, or maybe it was in the State Department, and they were asked about whether or not they would consider, whether or not the U.S. government would consider military force, and they said all options are on the table. No, fuck you. We ain't doing that shit. Okay. But you know why? It isn't just, a lot of people think, oh, it's a matter of ego and whatever, and he also used it at the time to deflect attention away from his cabinet picks, which were all horrible. Every single one of them is horrible. I don't care what department it is. Every single one of them is horrible. You got drunks, you got idiots, you got jackasses, you got greedy, corrupt liars. 90% of them have no clue what they're doing. They've never. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, yay, has never been in the military. He's the first one in a long time, if not ever, that's never been in the military and was appointed as Secretary of Defense. Okay. And has already, I remember reading this morning, doing a little bit of research for the channel, reading this morning that one of the people in the Arlington Cemetery, what's up, Beast? One of the people in Arlington Cemetery was a black man, okay, decorated veteran, etc., etc. They scrubbed all the information off the Arlington Cemetery website, and then just the URL is there, and it says DEI hire. Fuck you. Okay. So Pete is DEI. Yeah, Pete is DEI. Pam Bondi is DEI. You know, et cetera, et cetera. So there's quite a few links that I'm going to put in there. They're not my channel, but they're people that I support. Okay, at least with likes and support and follows and whatever. Okay. I wish I could support them all monetarily. I really wish I could. Let's see. So like I said, I was talking about the sand washing. Okay. Second one, which is obviously a little bit more closer to home for me, and that's Texas. And now they said, it's probably not going to be passed into law. You never fucking know with Texas. But some jackass decided to submit a bill to make just saying that you're transgender, not trying to get meds, not trying to do anything, walk into a bathroom, whatever. Just saying that you're transgender, they want to make that into a felony. But, we're not the other. We're not the scapegoats. Whatever. Fuck off. Okay. And then the last little bit, okay, is when I do the pin post, okay, I will list all of them. Okay. The other 9 Democrats who sided with Schumer and decided to get on their knees and suck Trump's ring and vote for it because he claimed that he voted for it because he was afraid of the consequences if they didn't. How about one, you get a fucking spine, okay, and 2, you do what your constituents sent you there to do. I don't necessarily blame the Republicans if their constituents sent them there to say, to oppose DEI or whatever it is they do, okay, and they do that, the majority do that. You're doing what your constituents sent you there to do. I've said this before. The top 5 Democrats in this country, in Congress, okay, I think it's 3 in the Senate and 2 in the House. Okay, top 5 Democrats for length of terms of service. Okay, 207 years. What? I was looking that up because I mentioned that briefly on another show. I was looking that up. I was like, no, that can't be right. So I went and looked, and that's only the top 5. Yeah, you got Chuck, my friends across the aisle. He can fuck off. That's only the top 5. Okay, that's not all the longer, not longer than them, but the relatively longer serving Democrats. Okay. The GOP is like 300 and something. No, excuse me. Yeah, it's 207 with the Democrats. And the GOP is like 251 or something like that. It's just freaking ridiculous. Okay, and much as I was surprised by Nancy Pelosi disagreeing with Chuck Schumer, and I think maybe she did that because she knew it was going to be safe enough to do so because there were enough Democrats voting for it. Okay, but I was really surprised by her telling Chuck Schumer that that we shouldn't do that. Go along with Trump. Pelosi needs to go home. Schumer needs to go home. Steny Hoyer needs to go home. They need to get the fuck out of Congress. It's just that's it. Pure and simple. It's just that. Pure and simple. Okay. And see, I did that one. I did that one. I did that one. So we're gonna switch to my guest here. So give me a second here to do all my behind the scenes crapola. That's a technical word, crapola. All right, where are you, you wee bastard? There you are. All right. So let's switch out the screen here. Make sure this is working properly. And 'tis. All right. So we're going to give it about another 10 seconds or so, and then I'll do a little bit of introduction on my guest, and then they can introduce, continue it, whatever. Let them ramble. Okay. So this show is going to be mainly 90% about indigenous issues. I am, of course, not indigenous. Ironically enough, my guest is a good friend of mine, and we've talked about this. I've already covered this issue with them before. I was told that I was indigenous growing up. When you look at me, you're like, that bitch is white. How the fuck is she indigenous? Okay, but I was told that, I was growing up, and my mother's maiden name was a clearly stereotypical indigenous name, and and I have high cheekbones, and whenever I would work at Walmart, and color my hair different colors, because I do that like 3 or 4 times a year. Whenever I would color either very dark brown or black, people walking by, because there's a large indigenous community in my area. What tribe are you from? And I thought I was, and I would say Ojibwe, okay, or as a white man says, Chippewa. And so then I did a DNA study, and I did 2 of them to compare, and I found out not a drop indigenous blood. Mostly Irish, a little bit of German, Swedish, Norwegian, Sicilian, and then the rest is Armenian. The fuck? But I guess that's where the high cheekbones come from. Anyway, so my guest name is Joey. I've known them for a day or 2, maybe. And they're super great person, super good friend of mine. Intelligent as hell, too, by the way. Okay. Which is one of the reasons why I admired them. I met Joey on, I think it was on TAE, wasn't it? Yeah. That disaster of a show. But anyway, I'm going to get into all that. I should do that sometime. I might even do a episode on atheists on the internet. Anyway, so I met them on the show. We became friends at some point. I don't know if it was during that time frame or thereafter or whatever. We've been friends ever since. And, I've said this before. I like to not speak over people and not speak for people, but speak in support of people in groups that I don't belong to. Because just because I'm trans, and just because I have a bunch of disabilities doesn't mean that I speak for. I'm clearly not indigenous. I am not black. I'm not Latina, etc. Okay, so I will speak in support of those groups, but I don't speak for them. So generally what I try to do, if I'm going to focus on that topic, is bring someone from that community on. Okay, I live out west. I'll let them get into any more detail than that if they want to, and take it away, Joey. Give me an introduction of yourself.
Alrighty. Joey Firelingdeer is my traditional last name. And that comes from my dad, whose name was Archie Firelingdeer, and my grandfather, whose name was John Firelingdeer. My grandfather and my father were both a little more famous for writing books. My grandfather especially, his book has been used in countless different college courses across the nation. Lame Deer, Seeker of Visions is the name of his book. And my dad's book's name was Gift of Power. And his wasn't as famous as my grandfather's, I'm assuming because of the nature of the actual time frame in which each man lived. My grandfather was alive during a time of a lot of change for Native Americans, and so his perspective was and still is really sought after historically. I'm Minikanju Lakota is the name of my own clan and tribe. Wakfokian clan. But my mother is also indigenous. She was Chumash and Quiche Mayan. And so I've got the combination. I grew up in Santa Barbara, which is where the Chumash were from. On the last little postage stamp left of family property that was, she married Don, and I forget what his name was. I think it might have been Diego. And she spoke 2 languages. One was Spanish, and the other one nobody in her family would name. And it wasn't until my mother was born. My mother heard that language growing up because she would speak it sometimes. And her mother would not tell her what that language was, and it wasn't until my mother was a much older adult that she heard it being spoken by a Chumash elder. And that's how she found out that she was Chumash. Because she remembered that language being spoke by her great-great-grandmother, which she was still alive when my mom was very small. My father, of course, he grew up speaking the language. He spoke only Lakota all the way up until he was 12 years old when his maternal grandfather died. And his uncles decided that he needed to go into the boarding school um, to learn English and to learn how to read and write and do arithmetic and stuff like that. So my dad didn't go into the boarding schools until he was 12. And by the time you're 12, as most people understand, you have a really difficult time picking up a second language. It's not the same as growing up being bilingual. If you grow up being bilingual, it's easy to pick up that second language, and it's been proven that it's easier to pick up other languages as well if you're grow up bilingual. But that was not the case for my father. His grandfather didn't know any English except for a few little words here and there, like hello and goodbye and words like that. Where's the bathroom? That sort of thing.
Right.
And his experience in the boarding school was one of getting beaten all the time for speaking his language when he couldn't speak English. And so he just basically ran away as often as he could.
Right.
And they always caught him and brought him back. All the way up until he was 16 years old, he said he ran away about 2 or 3 times a year, and they'd track him down and bring him back, and he would just bide his time until he could figure out how to escape again. And it was like that for him all the way up until he was 16 years old, when he went to Rapid City and bought a bottle of whiskey for his aunt and uncle, got them drunk, and then had them forge his parents' signature on enlistment papers. And that's how he ended up in the military at only 16, because they didn't need your birth certificate back then,
right.
Especially if you were Native American. Most Native Americans didn't even have one. And so the word of your parents was enough. And so he got this aunt and uncle drunk and got them to forge his parents' signatures on enlistment papers. And that was the beginning of how my father ended up in the Korean War. And it's also the beginning of his story of how he got captured on his first battle jump from perfectly good airplanes, because that was my dad.
Right.
His first battle jump out of an airplane, he ended up behind enemy lines, got captured, and spent his 17th and 18th birthday in the POW camp that he was stuck in for 18 months. So he said that in that POW camp, he learned more about the nature of colonization than he had any time in his life, because the Chinese who were running the camp knew enough about how Native Americans had been treated that they used that to try to undermine my father's confidence in the military and get him to divulge secrets, which he didn't have any secrets. He wasn't talking, but he didn't have any secrets, and they didn't really realize why he wasn't talking. And the biggest reason that he didn't talk is he could hardly understand what the heck they were saying. They were speaking English, but English was his second language. So he didn't understand really what they were talking about, and didn't understand half the words they were using. And so they didn't get any information out of him, but they sure tried to pit him against his fellow
POWs.
POWs.
Right.
And use that against him.
What was your okay? Well, first of all, I don't think I asked you. What are your pronouns?
Oh, my pronouns are they, them.
Okay. I mean, I know, but I wanted my audience to know. Um, what was your briefly? What was your childhood like growing up? As far as I mean, just in general, anything you want to say in general, until you were, you know, say old enough to move out of the house or whatever.
Well, by the time I was born, my dad was far more educated in what the system had done to Native Americans.
Okay.
And he had made a lot of friends in the American Indian movement who were, most of them were urban Indians that were born in big cities because of the relocation project that they had done during the, well, it started in the 30s, but it would continued all the way up until the 60s. And these kids were born full blood in cities and didn't have any connection to their Native American roots. And so they were coming back to their reservations to learn about their Native American roots and figure out how they could help, because they had realized that basically they had been, well, you if you read the UN um, treatise on what the definition is for genocide, you will find that one of the ways that they commit genocide is by taking people away from their cultures and their languages and putting them in institutions like schools that are strictly colonizers schools and teach the colonizers' language. And this is one of the ways that as urban Indians, educated urban Indians, they started to realize that they had had this genocide committed against them. And so they were trying to go back to their roots, trying to learn their languages, trying to establish connections with families that had basically lost them and never gotten the chance to meet them again. And so they were going back to these places. My dad, by that time, lived in Southern California, and he was a drug and alcohol counselor, and also ran a halfway house where prisoners, Native American prisoners that had just gotten released, could go and meet up with their families and try to reintegrate the ex-con with their families again. Because a lot of these convicts had a history of drugs and alcohol themselves and forced to get clean when they were in prisons. And so there was a lot of bad blood that would have been between them and their families had a lot of lack of trust with who they were, especially because they were freshly coming out of prisons.
Right.
And so my dad's job was to try to get them to acclimate to each other. And that's the world that I was born and raised in. A father being a drug and alcohol counselor by then, a whole lot of ex-cons, a whole lot of indigenous families, and an effort to bring back to the people pride in who they were, in their languages, in their cultures, and educated Indians in the American Indian movement. These were my uncles. People like Dennis Banks, people like Leonard Peltier, people like Russell Means. These were men that I was told to call uncle. These were the kinds of people that I grew up around. And so that was my experience growing up, not one of a large amount of ignorance, but one of a large amount of progress in trying to reinvigorate the cultures.
Where was it? Oh, there's a lot of talk in the in and about the black community of the school to prison pipeline. Was it as pervasive in the indigenous culture when you were growing up?
Oh, heck yeah. It still is. To this day, there are, I don't know what the statistics are and how they compare with African American statistics, but I know in some cases we are equal, if not worse off, than a lot of African American statistics. Our statistics are pretty bad. I don't know if it's just as many or if it's slightly more or slightly less, but it's around the same of school to prison pipelines for Native Americans to this day. And back then it was even worse because, well, for one thing, my ceremonial ways weren't even legal at all until I was 5 years old.
Gareth has a question for you. He says, would Joey like the 5 genocidal acts listed here for context at all?
Yeah, that would actually be
Sure.
really cool.
Joe says, finding tab over, and oh, there's Chief talking it up. They know you as well, obviously. So, where is it? I've got it written down here somewhere. Over the rainbow. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more specific topics here. And the way I have this set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a generic isn't what I want. A more pervasive, widespread, national topic involving indigenous people. And then I'm going to narrow it down a little bit more, and then I'm going to narrow it down a little bit more. There's 3 topics today, okay? So the first one, let me find my obs here. Thanks a lot, Geek. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. And lurking. Lurk, that's a rip. Okay, all right, where are you, you wee bastard? There we go. Okay, so, again, it's going to take a minute or 12. Where the hell is my back scratcher? Oh, there it is. I was going to throw this away after it got melted, and I thought, you know, that'll make a great back scratcher. And I don't have to buy one. Anyway, so it's going to take a minute or 12 for that to pop up. This is a meme that's been going around. I mean, it's not as prevalent now. It was pretty viral there for a while, and there was a lot of other people's responses and whatever to this meme. So, God, I hate the delay on this thing. It drives me up a freaking wall. And I know you've seen this, if not this particular meme before. I know you've seen memes like this, okay, or images like this. It's not just necessarily a meme. Images like this. Is this not showing up at all? Alright, where are you wee bastard? Why is this not? You know what? Don't make me mad. Turn green, rip my shirt off. It's showing there. There it is. Took forever. Okay, so it's a picture of 3 people, 3 brown people, okay, flipping off Mount Rushmore, which I'm going to get to another picture here in a second, flipping off Mount Rushmore, and actually I don't have that second picture. Anyway, so this Lucian B. Wintrick, and I think this was in 2017 or 2018, okay, so it's been a few years ago, says, they break into our country, steal resources, then do shit like this, and libs wonder why we are pushing for immigration controls. And the person correctly responds and says, those are Native Americans. Dumbass. He doesn't say that, but that's, you know, the implied, okay? There's another one, I believe it's from Jacob Wool, who's another jackass conservative, who says, responding to this particular one, and he says something along the same lines, that doing that or whatever, and then people responded below that image, okay, and they're like, they're not Mexican, and he's like, well, then what are they? Smarter than you, that's for damn sure. Let's see. Gareth says, love you, see Joey. Glad you have internet. Yeah, I'm glad they have internet too. Any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, whole or in part, a national ethnical. Did they say it right? Yeah. In whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such as. Oh, that's the first one. Okay. Number 2 is causing serious bodily or mentally harm to members of the group. We get in there. Well, I mean, and here's the thing that bugs me too. Okay, and I understand. For example, in my community, one of my communities. Okay, actually, pretty much all of my communities, but people with, they're called invisible disabilities. I'm bipolar disorder 2. I'm ADHD. I'm autistic, etc., etc. Okay. Everybody in those communities and similar communities have been treated like shit here. Okay. For the last 300 years. But as Joey and others can tell you, those aren't the only communities, okay? When people say, oh, well, America's not like this. Yeah, it's been like this for 300 fucking years, okay? Because you are affected, because you are noticing it now, doesn't mean that other people haven't been noticing it for the last 300 years, okay? Let me find I think my train of thought has left the station. Okay, whatever, go away. Where the heck is my showrunner? Because I had it written down there. This is a song that does not end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Okay, so, Gareth says, let's see, number 2 is called body harm. Number 3 is deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction or whole in part. Number 4, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group. Okay, another classic one. And then number 5, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Here's another thing too, is that a lot of people don't realize. Some people like myself, knew to some extent about the residential schools. Okay, both here and in Canada, or as I call them, and a lot of people call them, the concentration camps. Okay. But they also don't know that a lot of Native babies were taken from their parents and then just given to white couples. You want a kid, here you go. And obviously, also, even aside from any issues of not knowing anything about indigenous culture or whatever, not all of those white couples were, shall we say, good people. Okay, so that effect has been going on for a long time. So when it drives me up a wall when people say, we're not like this. No, we've been like this for a long time, for a lot of communities, for indigenous communities, for black communities, Latino, etc. Why does this keep hiding this on me? You know what? I'm about ready to throw my computer through a wall, which I'm really not going to do because this is an expensive computer, and I can't afford to replace it. There it is. Okay, so. So I'm just going to, I hit a couple of high points here. I'm not going to go over it all, entirely. This is from Wiki. Okay. The Mount Rushmore National Memorial. There's a memorial centered on a colossal sculpture. The sculptor, Gutsan Borlum, named it the Shrine of Democracy, which is ironic, and at the same time, colonizing. Democracy for who? And it started, it ran from the construction, started in 1927, ended in 1941, with the help of his son Lincoln Borglum. It features the 60-foot tall, I didn't realize they were that big, heads of 4 United States presidents, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Theodore Roosevelt. Now, first of all, we're going to go briefly in the 2 middle, the last one, and then we're going to talk to Joey about the first one, because there's an important thing that I did not know that they told me not too long ago. Just a bare fact, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. And I don't know about Washington specifically, but I do know that Thomas Jefferson graped a bunch. I have to use that word because, YouTube doesn't like the word without the G, but gripped a bunch of his slaves. Okay, and that's why and then even to my recollection, some of the offspring that were a result of that sexual assault. Okay, because he's a great guy, right? Theodore Roosevelt. There is a statue in 2020. The American Museum of Natural History. I think this was it in New York? Can't remember. Anyway, had a statue of him sitting on a horse. Of course, they always got to have a horse. Okay, and then on one side was a black man, and on the other side was an indigenous man. But below him, and definitely like he was, he didn't have chains on there. We might as well have. Okay. And then the other was Lincoln. Lincoln freed the slaves. Okay, so first of all, Lincoln was perfectly willing to keep slaves in one half of the Union if it kept the Union together. Okay. And eventually he changed his mind. But then you told me the story. I don't remember the individuals, but about the hanging. So can you tell us about that?
Oh, the Dakota 38 plus 2, they call it, because it was actually 40 people altogether, which included the actual first woman to ever be hung. She was indigenous, and that Dakota 38 is basically what happened is I think the numbers were about 200 Native American people basically ran out of food on the reservation and made their way off it to Mankato, where they were going to try to trade supplies for food. And white people accused them of stealing food, not coming to trade for it, but stealing it. And because they were being accused of it being stolen, the authorities in Mankato rounded up all of those people and put them in jail cells, and then contacted the president to tell him what was going on. Well, they contacted the nearby headquarters that was the reservation. The reservation recommended that they contact the president, that sort of thing. So they had contacted the president and asked him what to do about it, and he was like, hang them. And so that's how those people came to be hung for stealing food. Mankato, by the way, was part of their historic lands. So we're talking about people who came off of a reservation, which was really a concentration camp, because that's what they all were back then. They came off a reservation onto their own historic lands looking for food, willing to trade, and then got accused of stealing, then put in prison, and then he suggested that just hang some of them. And so that's exactly what they did. So these were hungry, starving people that were hung for coming off the reservation seeking food.
But he was the great emancipator, right?
I know, right?
Another case of whitewashing. One of the things I like, and it kind of threw me, was the fact that if you look at actual pictures, B says, yeah, those statues shouldn't be paid for by the government, taxpayer money. I agree. If you look at the actual pictures of Mount Rushmore, because you see where the natives are and they're flipping off, okay? All the heads are above the top of that photo, okay? So, most of the pictures, like 90% of the pictures, you look on the net, and 90% of the pictures you see in Mount Rushmore are like, close-ups, selfies. I guess you could call it in a way. Okay, so they're close-ups, so it makes them look bigger and more imposing when they're actually tiny as fuck. And you had mentioned something last time we talked about this, about the repairs that they needed to keep doing?
Yeah, there's like huge cracks up there in the stone, and they I can't even remember how many gallons of sealant I read, but it's something like 500 gallons of sealant that they use every 3 months on the cracks up there to try to keep them from getting any bigger so the freaking faces don't start falling off.
Right.
So, I mean,
Chucky
that's
darns.
all taxpayer money.
But but we can't spend that we can't spend money on social. Well, they're not even spending money; it's our money. We can't give money to people on Social Security. We can't spend money on EBT or Medicare or Medicaid because that's a waste of money. But we can spend it on Mount Rushmore. Garrus?
Right? And Gutzon Borglum, by the way, was a known white nationalist who also made that that incredibly racist again carving in the stone down in, is it Stonehill? It's like in Tennessee or Arkansas or someplace like that. Stone Mountain, maybe, is its name. It's got all the Confederate soldiers on it, and it's supposed to be a historical landmark. That's the same Gutzon Borglum who did that one.
Garrus says, when you say reservations, are you referring to those jurisdictions where the federal government forced the Indians to move to?
Yes.
I did a piece. Well, actually, it was a long post on Facebook, which I'm not hardly ever on anymore for a lot of reasons. But I did a long post on that, and I may put it sometime in like one of the descriptions here, when we cover similar issues. But or may even put it in this one. I don't know, because there's enough room in the description to do that. But it's a long post about the history, the good history, which is rare, but the good history between the Irish and the Choctaw and the Hopi and the Dene, the Navajo?
Dene, yeah.
Dene, okay. And how they were helping each other over the years. Not like every year or whatever, but how the Choctaw, right, almost, historically speaking, right after the Trail of Tears, where thousands of them died, they sent money to Ireland because Ireland was in the grip of the famine then, and millions of them died. Okay. There was roughly, before the famine started, there was roughly roughly 8 million people. Okay. By the time it was done, 4 million. That's it. Most of them died, and or the rest got out of there because there's nothing left for their families. What food that wasn't rotting in the fields, because the blight hit only the potatoes. So they could grow onions and carrots and whatever. But the English came in and stole those. So what the fuck, and then a lot of people left to try to get better. So the people that were left, if you got a village of 400 people and 200 of them leave, because usually it's about half, 200 of them leave and or have died, how are you going to keep yourself alive? And so the Choctaw sent I think it was $710 or $740, one of the two. Okay. I'll find out when I put the pin post in there. Okay. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but back then it was roughly $5,000 in this tiny Irish village. Okay. And believe me, it helped them out a lot. So the president of Ireland returned that favor, and I believe it was in the 90s, late 90s, with like a thing where they started up scholarships for indigenous people, the Choctaw specifically, to come over to Ireland for a year and do college studies and whatever over there. And then during the epidemic of the pandemic, I should say, of COVID, which is still going on, by the way. People are dying every day from COVID.
I know, right?
And getting long COVID and whatever, the ones that survive. They sent the Hopi and the Dene money and said, we're just paying it back. So there's been a long, mostly positive history between the two. What was the question I was going to ask you? The Batman. Okay, so you told me, so I want you to relate that a little bit. What you did at Mount Rushmore and with your dad.
Oh, well, my dad got special permission. First off, I guess the story kind of has a little prequel of my grandfather. In the 60s, he and a small group of Native Americans literally planted themselves on Mount Rushmore. They climbed up there and established their own camp even though they didn't have permission to be up there. And they were basically doing like a protest camp to try to bring attention to the plight of Native Americans in the state of South Dakota at the time. And my grandfather had been involved in that. He was the spiritual advisor that helped to guide them up there. And my grandfather had gotten special permission to go up there and pray and do ceremonies. My dad, I don't know if it's because he had the military record that he did, that they decided that he was okay enough to allow to go up there. They figured he wasn't going to do anything bad going up there. So he was able to get permission to go up there and use the mountain to do ceremonies on.
So,
and when I was little, he took us with him, me and my brother. And so I got to climb Mount Rushmore at least a dozen times in my lifetime.
Cool.
And got to be like all the way up. My dad kind of freaked out because at one point I was about 9 years old. I climbed all the way out on top of George Washington's head, and it started to rain. And that shit's smooth granite. Right. And when it gets wet, it gets slick. And my dad got really nervous and got mad at me and told me to come back from there.
Right.
But I literally peered out over his nose and spit on George Washington.
Good. You know, and this, when you were telling me this was the first thing that popped into my head was your dad had to go get permission to go onto stolen land, to go to a stolen spot that was desecrated by the U.S. government in order to hold a ceremony, you know, with his ancestors, you know, involving his ancestors. Okay, the little that I know of it. Now, if let's say AIM at that time, or soon thereafter, had taken over Arlington Cemetery, okay, and for some reason was legally able to take it over, okay, and said, you have to get permission from us to go visit your relative's grave. You know, there'd be a hue and an outcry and whatever else, you know. But, you know, because it's indigenous people, it's okay, right? One more point I wanted to make about this before we move on. Where'd it go? No, I covered the statue. Okay, so you know, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know, with what the general, maybe not every single person, but what the general viewpoint is of brain fart of where the hell is it? There it is, of Mount Rushmore. Are there any other places, and I'm sure there are, maybe, I don't know, are there any other places around the United States that maybe don't have the same amount of impact, but have impact that are similar, where there's either...
Yes, Devil's Tower.
Devil's Tower? Wasn't that the one that was in E.T.?
No.
Or I'm thinking of a different one.
2001 Space Odyssey, I think is the name.
Oh,
of
okay,
the movie.
okay.
I think so. The guy famously builds the giant thing of mashed potatoes that looks just like it. Right. Yeah, that movie. That was portrayed in that movie. But Devil's Tower was another ceremonial site for one of the most sacred ceremonies that the Lakota people even have. And then there's also Bear Butte. Bear Butte was another, Bear Butte is like, if I were up on the 5th floor of my apartment building, I could probably see it right over the ridge. It's really close to the town that I live in now.
Okay.
And Bear Butte was also a ceremonies that can happen on bare view. We've learned to work together with non-indigenous people to try to bring back some of the ceremonies to these places, and so that the ceremonies are back on bare view. However, they're also back on Black Elk Peak, which used to be known as Harney Peak. They recently renamed that peak. So the ceremonies are slowly coming back, and we're slowly getting the rights to practice our ceremonies back in the same spots we used to.
Okay.
But they won't let us do that with Mount Rushmore, and they won't let us do that with Devil's Tower.
Okay, so we're going to narrow this down, the scope of this down a little bit. Okay, I'm curious to see if anyone in the audience, and of course, again, I have this ignorant ass delay, drives me up a wall, and I think it's like 20 seconds. It's just super long. So if anybody knows somebody, either knows or knows somebody who knows me, can tell me how to shorten that delay, you know, because there was one method that I tried and it shortened it down to about 4 seconds, but then it messed the video of the show up, so I couldn't use that. But I would love to find out a way to shorten that video, and I've tried everything I can in OBS, and I've tried everything I can in YouTube, and it just hates me. So if anybody wants to give a guess as to who this individual is, I mean, I know who he is, and Joey knows who he is, but so while we're waiting on that, you know, I'm asking this question because I've known Joey for quite a while. Okay, so you told me a while back that you were, I don't know the term, so I'll ask you, that you were a religious figure in the faith that you either grew up in or were teaching at the time, and that you're not now. So what was the faith? What was your position is the word I want, you know, job, you know, whatever, and then what led you to no longer be there?
Well, so first off, there's two, I'm going to use the term medicine carrier because that's the closest English translation I can get to what it is in Lakota. There's a lot of different names for it in Lakota, and it depends on the ceremonies that you practice and teach as to what your title is in Lakota. But
Okay.
in English, it's just easiest to call it a medicine carrier. So medicine man, medicine woman, we'll use a Hollywood term. So medicine carrier is the closest translation, and I'll use that today. There's two types. There's the kind who's called to the medicine as an adult or a young person. Like usually what happens is a person recognizes in themselves that they're called to this when they're a young adult, and they're usually taken in and trained by the older adults that practice those same ways. The other way that you are chosen is by birth. Your grandparents' generation
Okay.
will have a vision that their grandchildren are supposed to be raised to become a medicine carrier. My grandfather had a vision that he would have both a girl and a boy who would be born that would carry his medicine. And he saw that as being my father's children.
Okay.
And so that's how I came to be chosen. And you grow up learning how to do ceremonies, the different songs that are involved, the hows and the whys and the what fors and all the things you do and don't do, all the different rules and regulations that come along with running these ceremonies. My grandfather chose my brother and I. My dad ended up, because my grandfather died just as he was about to take me away from my parents, because that's what you do. The grandparent generation takes the child about 5 years old, about 4 to 5 years old, and starts raising them as their own. And just about the time that my grandfather was ready to take me, he died. And so my father was left with the responsibility of raising us as if he were the grandparent generation. And so my father raised us in the different ways and learning all of the songs and stuff like that. So that was my position growing up, was one of like being in training. So kind of like, I guess you could say it's kind of like apprentice, journeyman, master.
Okay.
That's a decent way to actually look at it, because you're developing as you grow older. You're hitting these certain stages and phases where you can learn to conduct ceremonies on your own. And that's the way that I grew up and practiced as an adult. And it wasn't until about, let's see, it was 2015, February of 2015 was the month that I lost all my faith and became an atheist. And up until that point, I had been a clergy person. There's, using another white terminology, clergy person. I was that for many years. And it was when I decided, I'm not, it's kind, I equate it to like the FedEx sign. Somebody shows you the little arrow in the FedEx sign and you can't unsee it anymore. Like you always see the arrow in the FedEx sign after somebody shows it to you the first time.
Right.
And you always see it after that. And that's what it was like losing my faith. It wasn't like I decided to do it. It was like somebody showed me that I was wrong about the things that I was thinking, and I couldn't unsee it anymore.
Right. I went through the same process.
That's how it is for me now.
I went through the same process.
I can't hear you.
My software muted me for some reason. I don't know why. I went through the same process myself with.
I still can't hear you.
Hold on. The hell?
Now I can hear you.
Anyway, my computer hates me. So, like I said, cyborg weasels or gerbils or whatever, I went through the same process myself with my faith. You know, I was a fundamentalist, white nationalist, Christian, really bad person pretty much for many years, decades, okay? And kind of went through that same thing, and I've said this before, what saved my life and my sanity was, you know, acknowledging to myself, I always knew, but acknowledging to myself that I was trans, acknowledging that I wasn't evil for being trans, unlike Texas, who wants to make it a felony just for saying that you are. And then if they were wrong about that, what else were they wrong about? And that's when those walls started crumbling down. I sent you a message, by the way, on Facebook. I don't know if you're able to see that now.
No, I don't have Facebook open.
You're fired. Sign your last paycheck over to me. Give me all your, clean out your desk and give me all your chocolate. So, what we're going to do is I had planned for 3 topics, but we're going to do 2 because we kind of went long on this one. And I definitely want to cover that second one, okay? And so the person in the picture, let me catch up on the chat here for a second. B says, I can tell you know a lot about these things from a lot of different events. My knowledge is limited, but the pattern is too obvious to ignore and let the mind is fully colonized. And yeah, Beast, Gareth is a pretty smart individual. You know, he and I have known each other for a little bit, and I think quite highly of him. Gareth says, because Gareth's Scottish, okay, Gareth says, I can't do a Scottish accent for shit. I can do an Irish one pretty good, but, you know, Scottish, just take Irish and then add more brogue. It's about all I can do. But he says, it was the colonizers rocking up and saying to the yokels, get the fuck. Get the fuck out of here, basically. Some of them were just taken from their homes, no clothes, no other than clothes they had on their back, and you gotta go. So anyway, the man in question there is Leonard Peltier. Okay, so like I said, we have gone on a little long, so I'm going to shorten this up a little bit. Okay, he's an American activist. He's a member of the AIM, which is the American Indian Movement. He was convicted. We'll get into that briefly. Of murdering two FBI agents. Okay, in a June 26, 75 shooting. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life in prison. He became eligible for parole in '93, and I know you've got a story about that, about each year when he comes up for parole or whatever. On January 19th, 2025, his sentence was commuted to indefinite house arrest by Biden shortly before he left office. See, here's the thing, okay? Biden was approached by what Joey's going to tell you about, but Biden was approached by individuals who didn't want Peltier released, and they'll describe why, okay? And finally, Biden said, I don't know if it was just a fuck you to Trump or whatever, but finally Biden said no, he needs to go home. When Joey and I discussed this before, we talked about the fact that they thought, and I thought, that, because I've been aware about Peltier for quite some time, I thought that Obama was going to release him, and nope, didn't do it a bit. Okay, human rights watchdogs, such as Amnesty International, Mother Teresa, which that little, like Christopher Hitchens said, I don't find the like Christopher Hitchens said, I'm not fond of quoting him, but that little Albanian dwarf can kiss my big white Irish ass. But anyway, Nelson Mandela, Dalai Lama, etc., tried to get him to get out as well. Okay, so he was accused, convicted of these 2 murders. Okay, the FBI admitted in court that he didn't do it. And he admitted that he was in a shootout, but he was at the other end of that reservation, I think it was, or the area, and he didn't do it. Okay. There were other witnesses who said he wasn't there on that side, he didn't do it. But yet there was a witness, I've got her name here, somewhere over the rainbow. There we go. Okay, so it was on Pine Ridge, okay, with the Goon Squad, which I'll let Joey get into. The government admitted they don't know who killed the agents, but it wasn't Leonard. So basically, fuck his agents. We're gonna keep innocents. We're gonna keep him in life because he didn't snitch. It's the only fucking reason. Even the wrong type of vehicle. Then they lied about it in court, and then got revealed. And they changed their statements in court. First, they said they were looking for a red pickup truck, and then said they were looking for an orange and white van, like what Peltier drove. Okay. Okay. So. I want to hear your take on. I mean, obviously we can't, because I could spend 6 hours on this. But tell us what your take on it is.
Well, I grew up understanding the man did not do what he was accused of doing. Like I heard, and my dad would never tell me who the shooter actually was, though he knew, and said that he knew because he had actually run a ceremony with the shooter inside, and the shooter said, I was the shooter. And it was the biggest thing of guilt that the shooter carried, was that another man was doing his time. But he wasn't about to give himself up, and neither was anybody else who knew. And so everybody basically were not snitching, because snitching is a big freaking thing in indigenous circles.
Let me interject here just for a second, okay? Because my thought, because I have to use a thought before it dies of loneliness, was that if this had been white people, and this had been somebody confessing to a Catholic priest, they'd have been fine with it. He's a Catholic priest and he can't reveal what's happened during confession, so we can't put him in jail. Anyway, go ahead.
So, I grew up knowing that he didn't do it. My dad would never say who did. All he would tell me is yes, you know him. Because because I would ask, well, do I know him? Like,
Right. This person, whatever.
is this killer, walking around? And my dad was like, well, yeah, he's walking around free. And it never seemed to be a big deal to him. So I never really let it be a big deal to me either. Like, I knew I had grown up with tons of elders who had been to war, who had killed people, and so it wasn't that big of a deal, because you have to remember, to a colonized people, it is war that you are in when that shootout happens between you and authority figures, because the authority are colonizers.
Right.
That's your land. Those are your people, and you're indigenous to the land. And so when the colonizers come up and they start shooting at you, it's war. And so that's how I grew up getting taught about what it was to be indigenous and what it was to, like, have this person who is innocent of all charges and stuck in a prison, who's basically representing tons of indigenous people who gotten caught up in the prison systems before for being themselves and incarcerated for it. Like, he became a representation, like a martyr,
Right.
for our
Right.
people. And so I grew up getting told about, not just told about him, but every once in a while, if something happened in the prison and he was allowed to call, he would call the house. And so every once in a while, I answered the phone and got to hear that it was San Quentin Federal Penitentiary, or later on Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, wherever he got moved, that there was a convict on the line. Will you take charges? And I had to call one of the adults in the house to come get the phone, because I was not allowed as a kid to say, yeah, we're going to accept the charges. They make you call your parents.
Right. Right.
So I got to, like, actually, one time, I think probably one of the things that moved me the most about my dad and Leonard's relationship is, after the many years that my dad had spent getting the sweat lodge ceremony into prison so Leonard could sweat, when my dad died, Leonard actually called the house. And by then I was an adult, and I was able to say, yes, we can accept the charges. And he talked to me on the phone for a while before I handed it off to my mom. And he had called to deliver his what do you call it? His best thoughts to us,
Okay.
his prayers to us,
Right.
that we would, as a family, be able to get through losing Dad, because he knew how much Dad was an important part of our lives. Because everybody who knew my dad knew that my dad was our teacher as kids, and that he was a medicine carrier in his own right, chosen by his grandfather, but that he was also a teacher to myself and my brother, basically taking the place of our grandfather.
Right.
And so it was an even, I guess you could say, it made
Family members too.
well, I kind of wish I learned about him getting overwhelmed me. I found out that he got released, and I was literally at work waiting to start my shift. When I was scrolling through Facebook, which is how I found out, and a couple of the native pages I followed were like posting up, update little, they put the little red siren-looking lights on there,
Okay.
and basically, you know, calling all Native Americans, here's a piece of information that we're all excited about, and this is how I learned that he had been released. And there was only one person that I could talk to at work that I knew would care, because
Right.
she is part indigenous herself, but she has a lot to do with the Native American community in the area as well. And so she knew who Leonard Peltier was, and I got to be able to at least commiserate a little bit with a person who knew what was going on as well. But I got really emotional and got all choked up and was doing everything that I could to not cry, and
Right,
had
right.
to like go through my work day. I had to do my shift,
Suppress all your
like,
shit that you want to feel.
trying to not cry every time I thought about it.
Yeah, I don't blame you a bit. So, the last question here is from Gareth. He says, do you think it's fair for Native Americans to treat any and all forces of the United States as an occupying army?
I think so, but I'm considered kind of militant by people.
Which is
So
one reason why
I
we're good
think
friends.
so. But I can't speak for all Lakota people.
Right, right. I like to use the phrase, because it wasn't originated by me. I remember reading it somewhere else a couple years ago. Different methods, same goals. Okay, I know that a lot of people, either because they don't have the spoons, they don't have the time, they don't have the, sometimes they don't have the inclination. And I'm not saying that I'm the most articulate person in the world, but they can't run their mouth like I can. They don't have the freedom, basically, to do what I do. That they can't, or they don't have the safety, okay, to do what I do, because of a lot of people, it's not safe to do what I do. So I understand that completely. My viewpoint, okay, and I can't obviously speak for any of your community, but my viewpoint is, yes, you know, the not so much occupying with us though, with the trans community and with the queer community as a whole, because we've always been around. And you know, prior to my coming out, you know, my transition, I've mentioned this before. If I'm driving down the street, I don't drive anymore, but if I'm driving down the street, okay, and a cop pulls me over, sometimes I pass, sometimes I don't. I don't like that word necessarily, but I'm going to use it as a shortcut. Okay, so if the cop goes, oh, she's trans, okay, I might get some grief for that. Okay, I might have some problems with that, because a lot of trans people deal with cops. What I'm not going to have is when I get pulled over by a cop, and if I'm not, I get trouble because I'm trans and black, or I'm trans and Latina, or I'm trans and Asian, or whatever. Okay, there's that added level of danger. It's danger. Okay, you know, walking down the street. You know, in Tennessee, fortunately, the law got overturned back then. I don't know if it would now. But walking down the street, they tried to ban drag performances, but they had to leave the law vague enough, because they can't just say it's illegal to be drag, okay, because it's free speech. So they had to leave the law vague enough that a cop could just walk up to you, me, a cis person, who may be, you know, wearing different clothes or whatever, and say, I'm sorry, you know, I'm going to arrest you, you know, for being trans, basically, or being, you know, being in drag, okay. And then you have to go through all that crap of, you know, trying to prove, you know, whatever. So it was clearly unconstitutional from the start, okay. And I believe it was the ACLU took it up right away. We're going to get into some ways that people can help you. Dr. Med says militant is good. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've told my daughters this before. I have 2 daughters, okay, and I have 9 grandkids. Yay! Shout out to my daughters and grandkids, even though they don't watch the show. And I've told them before that I've been incarcerated. Not that I would like to be, but I've been incarcerated. Spirit says the last 20 minutes have been the cats yelling at me as I try to take some pain meds. I'll have to watch this when you upload it. Also, the volume is kind of low for me. Okay, so thank you for stopping by, Sapira. I'm gonna do your assistance as well after I do Joey's. Okay, so I'll pop that up on the screen. All right. Thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it, and thank you for letting me share that. Okay, I appreciate that. Where the hell was I? God, I hate my brain sometimes. So let's just get into that. Okay, so Joey is disabled. Okay, they got kind of screwed coming and going. Okay, because here's the thing: because they live out west. Okay, and in the state that they live in, you have to work X. I think most of them actually do it now. You have to work X amount of hours to get EBT. Okay. But the problem is they're disabled. They can only work so many hours physically. Okay. But yet, when they first went to apply for a disability with a wheelchair and people to back up their statement that they were disabled, the judge is like, nah. Now, I've heard from many people over the years that like 99% of people, the first time you apply, you get turned down. Unless you don't have a leg or you're blind or whatever, something that they clearly can't, go over. I remember my nephew, who passed away a few years ago from complications from Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. His mother got a letter saying that he wasn't disabled anymore, so he was going to be cut off SSI. And I was like, what? Because at this point, he could control his head and his right hand, and that was it, because of the debilitating effects of the disease. And she said, oh, this isn't the first one I've gotten either. And it was a form letter. And when I say form letter, if you're young and you don't know what that is, it's just a letter where they, type out somebody's name or whatever, they leave a blank, okay? There was literally a line and somebody hand wrote his name in there, which tells me also that they sent this out to a lot of other people, okay? So the disability system in this country is full of shit, okay? Even it isn't just Trump, okay? It isn't just the GOP, okay? Because it was full of shit under Biden. It was full of shit under Obama. It was full of shit under Clinton, okay? It's been full of shit for decades. If you are living together, okay, two partners, gender, whatever, doesn't matter. If you're living together and you get married, one of the other will be cut off with disability, just because you got married. Ain't no extra income or whatever, just because you got married. Yeah, so it's a bunch of horseshit. So let me pop up that graphic. Speed of lightning, roar of thunder, fighting all who rob and plunder, underdog. It's an old show. Check it out. Okay. There we go.
I used to love that show too.
Yeah, I love it. And while I'm waiting for this to pop up, I'm a cartoon fanatic. Okay, so I have all the Underdog. Okay. With Polly Purebred and Simon Legree and whatever else. It wasn't Simon Legree, whatever. Simon something or other. Simon Sinister or Sinister Simon, one of the two. Okay. And Dudley Do Right, and whatever. Okay. Well, that's with Rocky and Bullwinkle. Huh?
That was Penelope Pit Stop and Friends.
Yes. What's his name? Rocky and Bullwinkle. Okay, I have all of those, including the I love the Fractured Fairy Tales. Those are hilarious. I have all the Pink Panther. I have all the Foghorn, Leghorn, and the Dog. I have all the Bugs Bunny going way back to 1940. I have all the Daffy Duck going all the way back. The Porky Pig going all the way back. I felt sorry for the kids who used to watch it or whatever. It was getting less and less and less when they finally stopped doing Saturday morning cartoons. I was like, I already got them all anyway. I don't care, So this is the links and the information if you want to help out Joey. This is there's a GoFundMe at the bottom, okay? But then if you want to send them directly, because sometimes it'll take a couple of days or whatever, you just want to send them out. I had somebody once, I tried to help them with a GoFundMe, and they accepted it, and then this drives me up a wall, somebody sent them $15, okay? And they sent it back, and they told me that it wasn't, I ended up blocking this person on Facebook. They told me it wasn't worth it to send it back, and and they sent it back because that much they could just get from somebody on the street. It's fucking money, okay.
I know, right?
And then I did like a little write up for them, how I do for GoFundMe sometimes, and they told me that didn't particularly pertain to them. It was like a little fictional short story. It didn't have to. That wasn't the point. And they just got really snotty about it. I was, whatever. I didn't stop the GoFundMe, okay, but I just blocked them. Whatever. I don't care. So anyway, there's Venmo, Cash App. It's supposed to be an H in there. It's not Cash App. It's my typing. Okay. PayPal, and then the GoFundMe link. The one that's on Joey's page, Facebook page. I don't know if you've changed that yet or not. But the old one, the link isn't accurate. That's the one that's accurate. Okay. And so then the other one is going to be Saphira. Okay. Batman. This one, she calls it the Prima Begging Bowl, is just because she's on SS, it's SSI or SSDI or whatever the hell it is. I'll get to you in just a second, Gareth. Okay. I didn't forget you. I just got like 75 different things going on in my head right now. But this is her called her Prima Begging Bowl, which is the link there. Well, there's a Cash App and a Ko-fi, which is supposed to be in there somewhere. It isn't. So what I'll do is I'll message her later, okay, and I'll get all that information, and then I'll put that in the list as well as Joey's stuff, okay. I'll put all the information in the pin post, okay, and the links, that'd be used for the show and whatever, so y'all can take a look at that. So let's see. Gareth says, I've just got my copy and hands on a copy of the new Scottish Disability Forum. Marriage equality is not equal until gay, trans, and disabled people can marry without penalty. True. Gareth says, Gang Whirly, you'll have to let us know how that goes. Gang nailed it. Well, they usually do. I am a very ardent supporter of Gang. They've been nothing but good to me and a lot of people. Pretty much everybody's showed up in my chat too, as far as that goes. Either I know somewhat well, or people I've known for a long time, or people I know quite well, or whatever. So I'm gonna do one more thing here. And it's not a graphic. Let me get back to my OBS, which is what is it? Online Broadcasting System or some crap like that. Whatever it is, I don't know. Anyway, let me make sure that this is the right picture. Yep. Okay, so I am on Blue Sky as the Angry Wrench Speaks. I think it's the Angry Wrench Speaks .creator.com or .creator.blue or something like that. Anyway, it's the Angry Wrench Speaks. Okay, and you'll see my little baby goat on there as well. Okay, baby goat is cool. I love baby goats. That's my Mouthy account. Okay, if you happen to be on Blue Sky and you see it and you want to stop by and give me a follow. I have, oh lordy, I think I have almost 4,300 followers now, something like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna look at it right now, but I had like 4,024 or something this morning, and by the time I went to just a few minutes before I went on air for the show, maybe half hour or whatever, I had like 4,250. So yeah, so it's jumped up quite a bit. So I appreciate all the people on Blue Sky who follow me. I have a writing account on Blue Sky called Shawan of the Fae, and I'll put that name in and whatever because it's not spelled the way it sounds. Okay. Or Shawan of the Fae. Either way. Shawan, either pronunciation is fine with me. Okay. Tomato, tomato. And then I have my comic account, the Existential Cafe, and that has to do with, it is a comic strip. Let me bring this up here. It is a comic strip about a bar, or a lounge, I should say, up in the clouds with the gods. There's, let's see, there's Cthulhu, Venus, Persephone, Yahweh, Odin, Jesus, Muhammad,
Hecate.
Venus, Hecate. Who else am I missing here? Persephone, yeah. And there's a lot of story arcs that mix together. Basically, the idea is that Odin and Yahweh, who are the two main characters, okay, and they're always in every single script, okay, are good friends. And then Satan is the piano player, and he gets introduced to because it's the first time Odin's been there before, but he brings Yahweh into the cafe for the first time. Okay, and they meet Satan, who is Yahweh's ex-college roommate. Okay, and they had a falling out over a ceramic hedgehog. And you'll have to look at the comic, okay, to find out why. Venus is the torch singer, okay, and is one of two. Persephone is the other one, actually. One of two ex-girlfriends of Yahweh, and Persephone is the other one, and she's also, I decided to use her because she's 6 months underground, 6 months above ground. She's bipolar, okay. Muhammad is one of the waiters. Superior said, yeah, and I had a guy try to tell me I was faking blood tests for anti-DNA. Sometimes I want to, Superior says at the time I was not even aware the body could do that. Yeah, they just use a lot of excuses to denigrate people. Let's see. Like I said, Anthony, the philosophy major waiter, is the one who owns and operates the place. See, I covered the waiters. Oh, Jesus is the cook. Okay. Jesus is the cook. There's also a story arc in there about him and Christmas. You'll have to check that out. Cthulhu is the sushi chef. Hello. I mean, who else are you going to have as the sushi chef? If you got Cthulhu up there at all, he's going to outstrip everybody. But anyway, there's mostly religion and philosophy, and it's not. I don't want to say that it's not sarcastic at times, okay, and that it's not biting humor, but it's not necessarily mean. I don't care about profanity, although there's usually no profanity whatsoever in the comic strip. But it definitely takes a good look at a humorous look, I think, at religion, politics. One of the recent episodes involved Galileo, okay, and Yahweh. So you can check that out on Blue Sky, okay. All that crap is on Blue Sky. I will have a link to my link tree, which has got that. It's got all my other links. It's got my books. I write and sell books online. I do a sticker shop and a t-shirt shop, and I will soon have the cartoon figures, plus Baby Goat, but I'll soon have the cartoon figures from the Existential Cafe as stickers and then on t-shirts. Now, the thing about the stickers is I decided, it's useless, not useless, but it's just silly. If you use Spreadshirt, which is the shop I use for the stickers are like $1.99, cheap as shit, okay. But the coffee cups with it printed on it, okay, are like $17, okay, and that's not counting my profit. Alright, so you're gonna pay $18 for a coffee cup with my sticker on there? No, because what you can do is you can buy my sticker for $2, I think it is, and then go to Walmart and get a blank coffee cup for $4 and put it on there. There you go. So the only thing I'll be doing out of that shop is stickers. Because their shirts are even more expensive. Holy crap. And then the shirts are about half price at my other shop versus Spreadshirt. And Dr. Mez says, thanks to you, by the way. And B says, don't say Galileo. Now I got flashbacks to a certain atheist that said a bunch of BS and acted like he was him. Yeah, believe me, don't get me started on the atheist community. I might do that one time, not the reaction, what's the word I'm looking for, the evolution, to use an ironic word, the evolution over time from the atheist communities, which actually had a fairly good representation and press, at least, 10 years or so ago, okay, maybe a little longer, and then how it just went, you had Elevator Gate, you had what I call Rationality Rules Gate, and that was a huge hit to a lot of people in the atheist community at that time, rightfully so. So anyway, we're winding down here. So is there anything else? I'm going to say something after that, but is there anything else you want to say to the audience before we go?
Just that I'm glad that everybody showed up. And for everybody watching and everything, try to learn more about indigenous people, especially if you are not indigenous to the place where you're from right now. Like, try to learn more about the indigenous people who are there. And if you are indigenous to where you come from, congrats.
Right. I take a lot of pride in, as my grandmother would say, my fucking Irish heritage. And it, any other person of any ethnicity who wants to do that should have the same freedom to do the same. Okay, we've had a long history in this country. A phrase that drives me up the wall is, "Well, the Irish were slaves too." No, we weren't. Flat out, no, we weren't. And I'm not going to get into that because I could spend another 4 hours on that one. But no, we weren't. Okay, check it out. Use your brain for something besides a hat rack. So I do want to thank everybody for showing up. I appreciate that. Like I said, if you're on Blue Sky, hit me up on those. I am on Facebook, although I don't really post much, and that's more on my personal profile than anything. You can leave a comment in the comment section, and that really helps my algorithm more than just about anything. I mean, yeah, it's nice, for people to watch in the chat, and it's cool. And people chatting in the chat like they have been, that's cool. But if you agree with me, you disagree with me, you say the show sucked, you say the show was good, you want something in the future. If you want me to talk about atheism, or you want me to talk about specifically a whole list of the Trump candidate, cabinet candidates, okay, who are now are now taking the positions, or you want to talk about trans issues in regard to the administration, or you want to cover disability, or whatever you want, put that in the thing, and I will try to do as much as possible. I will try to do a show on it. I only do a show on Sundays, okay. I am going to be starting to do mild clips like what I did before, where they're just text, like 2-3 minutes long, okay, during the week. But I will only be doing the live show itself on Sundays. The comic strip is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, so weekend stuff. Okay, what's up, Jan? I'm glad that you showed up. We're just about to end the show. Jan is one of my absolute favorite cousins. She is an awesome person, hands down. I love her to death. She needs to call me after the show because we haven't talked in 7 or 8 years. Exaggeration, a couple months, but whatever. You need to call me, and she, if I just made the sound, she would get this. But every time I call her on the phone, if he's awake, her cat just goes meow, 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 and she's petting him. He's like, "Shut up!" He's like, meow. So yeah, Jan is like I said, one of my favorite cousins of all time. I love her to death. She's beautiful people. I thank all of you who showed up. I appreciate it. You are one of the main reasons I do what I do. I like to try to educate people if I can. I like to try to point out the foibles of different systems, whether it's the so-called justice system, they know justice is just us, or whether it's a political system or a social system or an economic or religious system or whatever. I like to point that out. I like to give education. I like to do humorous stuff once in a while. And I did a joke show a week or so ago. Maybe I'll do another one. Not next week, because I've already got something planned, but maybe I'll do another one after that. And in that case, Jan says, "Oh crap, I'm not home. Give me a good time." There you go. Let's see. Well, I mean, I'm retired, girl, so you let me know what time you want to call, and just hang out for a little while. It doesn't have to be hours, but just hang out for a little while, on Messenger or whatever, and we'll yak. But I like to do what I do. I like running my mouth, obviously. I like being at least having a public face. Okay, I don't mind that. I like supporting people that are in my community and supporting people that are not in my community. And I've learned a few times. I've done it a few times over the years, overstepped my boundaries. Okay, and I've learned, hopefully, I've learned, not to do that anymore. So, like I said, last point. Okay, because I usually say goodbye, and it takes me 25 minutes to say goodbye. So, if you want to watch the show again, tune in on Sundays. What's up, Wrench? I'm just about to end the show too. If you want to watch the show, okay, it's Sundays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's always the same time. I used to switch it around whenever it's hard for people to get that regular schedule. Have a good night, Gareth. And same to you, gang, if you're still on. The show is every Sunday. The cartoon strip is every Thursday or Friday, Saturday, Sunday on Blue Sky, and I think that's about it. So where the heck is my obsy sailing over the YouTube plane? All right, there we go, you wee bastard. All right. So, thank you all for showing up. I appreciate it. You are why I do what I